Are you tired of your own mind being a prison of endless worries and what-ifs? 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosophers discovered a profound secret. Peace isn't found by controlling the world, but by mastering your mind. Today, we reveal 8 ancient habits to stop overthinking and find unbreakable calm. The ancient city of Rome was a place of astonishing beauty and unparalleled chaos. Beneath the marble columns and the grand arches of the Forum, a relentless current of ambition, fear, and commerce flowed. Here we meet Elian, a merchant of exotic silks and spices. By all outward measures, Elian was a man who had won the game of life. His coffers were heavy with silver, his home was adorned with fine art, and his name was spoken with respect in the trading guilds. Yet, inside Elian's mind, a quiet, terrifying war raged every single day. Elian was a chronic overthinker. When the sun dipped below the horizon and the city grew quiet, his mind would awaken with 1,000 terrifying whispers. What if the pirate ships intercept my fleet in the Mediterranean? What if my competitors bribe the senators to raise the taxes on silk? What if my health fails and I cannot provide for my family? What if the mob turns against me? His wealth had not bought him peace. It had only purchased more expensive anxieties. He was a prisoner in a golden cage of his own design, exhausted by battles that had not even happened yet. One evening, driven to the brink of madness by his own relentless worrying, Elian sought out an old philosopher named Rusticus, who lived on the rugged outskirts of the city. Rusticus possessed nothing but a simple tunic, a modest garden, and a reputation for an unshakable, almost supernatural tranquility. When Elian confessed his torment, his sleepless nights, his racing heart, the vivid nightmares of ruin, the old man simply smiled, his eyes holding the stillness of a deep, undisturbed lake. "You are drowning, Elian," Rusticus said gently. "Not in the ocean, but in a puddle of your own imagination. You suffer not from reality, but from your thoughts about reality. To find peace, you must first master the 2 foundational habits of the Stoic mind. Habit 1. The dichotomy of control, the sphere of choice. Rusticus picked up a dry olive branch and drew a large circle in the dirt floor of his courtyard. He then drew a much smaller circle precisely in the center of the first. "Look at this inner circle," the old philosopher instructed. "Within this boundary lies everything you actually own. Your beliefs, your desires, your choices, your judgments, and your actions. This is your domain. The gods themselves cannot take this from you." He then pointed the stick to the vast space between the inner and outer circles. "Out here lies everything else. The weather, the economy, the opinions of other merchants, the loyalty of your sailors, the health of your physical body, and the whims of the emperor. None of this is truly yours. You can influence it, but you do not command it." Rusticus looked deeply into Elian's tired eyes. "Your anxiety, my friend, comes from a simple, tragic mathematical error. You are spending 90% of your mental energy trying to control the outer circle, while completely abandoning the inner one. You are trying to command the wind, instead of learning how to sail." To stop overthinking, Elian had to practice the dichotomy of control. Every time his mind began to spiral into worry, he had to stop and ask himself a single, ruthless question. Is this up to me? If the answer was no, he had to train himself to categorize it as nothing to me. Elian began to apply this habit daily. When a courier brought news of storms in the east, his heart would instinctively leap with panic. But he would pause. Can I control the clouds over the Aegean Sea? No. What can I control? I can control my reaction. I can ensure my ledgers are balanced, and I can choose not to suffer the loss before it actually happens. By ruthlessly dividing his reality into these two circles, the heavy, suffocating fog of overthinking began to lift. He was no longer carrying the weight of the entire Roman economy on his shoulders. He was only carrying the weight of his own daily choices. Habit 2. Premeditatio malorum, the rehearsal of ruin. However, mastering the present moment was not enough, for Elian's mind was constantly projecting into a catastrophic future. He lived in terror of going bankrupt and losing his lavish lifestyle. To cure this, Rusticus taught him a paradoxical, deeply counterintuitive habit, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. "You fear poverty," Rusticus said one afternoon, handing Elian a bowl of plain, coarse lentils and a cup of tepid water. "You lay awake at night, imagining the horror of losing your silks and your silver. But your fear thrives in the shadows. It grows monstrous because you refuse to look directly at it. We are going to drag your worst-case scenario into the sunlight." Rusticus instructed Elian to spend 3 days living as a beggar. He was to wear his oldest, most threadbare tunic, eat only stale bread and water, and sleep on the hard floor. He was not allowed to touch a single coin of his wealth. "While you do this," Rusticus commanded, "you must ask yourself, is this the terrible condition that I feared?" At first, Elian resisted. Why deliberately inflict suffering? But he obeyed the master. For 3 days, he lived in voluntary poverty. He slept on the cold stone. He chewed the tasteless bread, and a miraculous realization washed over him. He was still breathing. The sun still warmed his face. He could still think, reason, and observe the beauty of the world. The absolute worst-case scenario, complete financial ruin, was not a death sentence. It was just a different set of circumstances. By visualizing and even briefly practicing his deepest fears, Elian stripped the future of its terrifying power over him. Overthinkers suffer because their minds create exaggerated, blurry monsters in the future. The Stoic habit of premeditatio malorum forces the mind to define the monster, stare it in the face, and realize it is a mortal, survivable thing. By rehearsing ruin, Elian paradoxically found an impenetrable sense of security. The future could no longer hold him hostage. Months passed, and Elian's mental fortitude grew, but philosophy cannot remain an abstract theory in a quiet garden. It must be tested in the arena of reality. The ultimate test arrived during the autumn equinox. Elian had invested a massive portion of his fortune into a fleet of 3 merchant vessels loaded with priceless purple dye from Tyre and spices from the east. He decided to sail with the flagship to oversee the delicate transaction. For the first week, the Mediterranean was as smooth as polished glass. But on the 8th day, the sky bruised purple and black. The air grew violently cold. A sudden, monstrous tempest descended upon the fleet. The wind shrieked like a dying animal, tearing the sails to shreds. Waves the size of small hills crashed over the deck, splintering the wood. Panic erupted among the crew. Men screamed, praying to Neptune, weeping, convinced they were taking their final breaths. In the past, an event like this would have shattered Elian. His mind would have spiraled into furious overthinking, cursing the gods, agonizing over the lost money, and drowning in panic before the water even touched him. But as he clung to the mainmast, drenched in freezing salt water, he engaged the next 2 habits of the Stoic path. Habit 3. Amor fati, loving the tempest. The first instinct of the overthinking mind is to resist reality. It screams, "This shouldn't be happening. This is unfair. Why me?" This resistance creates a massive secondary layer of suffering. As the ship violently pitched, Elian remembered the words of another Stoic teaching, amor fati, the love of one's fate. It was not enough to merely tolerate the storm or to grudgingly accept it. A true Stoic must learn to embrace it, to love whatever reality throws in their path. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, would later write that a blazing fire turns everything that is thrown into it into flame and brightness. "Do not wish for reality to be other than it is," Elian shouted to himself over the roaring wind. "Wish for reality exactly as it is occurring right now." He realized that the storm was not happening to him. It was happening for him. This tempest was the ultimate forge. The fire designed to test the philosophy he had been studying. If life gave him calm seas, he would practice gratitude. If life gave him a deadly storm, he would practice courage. Amor fati acts as a supreme antidote to overthinking because it destroys the gap between expectations and reality. Elian let go of the mental image of a safe, profitable journey. He stopped overthinking how much money he was losing with every crate that washed overboard. Instead, he embraced the chaos. He became singularly focused on the present moment, helping the sailors secure the rigging, bailing water, maintaining his balance. He turned the terrifying obstacle into the raw material for his own character. He loved the fate he was given, and in doing so, the anxiety vanished, replaced by a crystalline, hyper-focused calm. Habit 4. Memento mori, the shadow of mortality. As the storm raged into the night, a massive wave crashed violently against the port side of the ship, snapping a wooden beam that narrowly missed Elian's head. For a fraction of a second, the abyss of death opened its jaws right in front of him. In that terrifying flash, Elian was forced to confront the fourth Stoic habit, memento mori, the meditation on mortality. Remember that you must die. Overthinking is a luxury of those who believe they have endless time. We overthink conversations that happened 3 years ago. We agonize over whether we wore the right tunic to a banquet. We obsess over the petty opinions of neighbors we do not even like. We waste our mental energy on trivialities because we operate under the illusion of immortality. Clinging to the broken mast with the black, freezing ocean promising a watery grave, Elian's perspective violently shifted. What did his wealth matter now? What did his social standing in Rome matter? What did the insults of his competitors matter? None of it meant anything against the absolute, uncompromising reality of death. Memento mori is not a depressing thought. It is the ultimate clarifier. It acts as a powerful filter for the mind. When you truly realize that you could leave life right now, at this very moment, 99% of the things you overthink suddenly reveal themselves as completely meaningless. "I am a dying man," Elian thought, feeling the cold rain lash against his face. "Whether it is late in this sea or 30 years from now in a warm bed, my time is finite. I refuse to spend whatever time I have left agonizing over things that do not matter." The storm eventually broke just before dawn. The ship was battered, half the cargo was lost to the depths, and the crew was exhausted. But they had survived. As the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sea in hues of gold and pink, Elian sat on the broken deck. He had lost a fortune, but he had gained something infinitely more valuable, his own mind. He had faced the ultimate loss and the threat of death, and he had not been broken. The habit of memento mori had permanently burned away his tendency to overthink small, insignificant things. Weeks later, Elian's battered flagship limped into the harbor of Ostia, near Rome. The news of his disaster had traveled faster than his ship. As he walked down the gangplank, he was met not with sympathy, but with the cold, calculating stares of his competitors. In Rome, reputation was everything. To lose half a fleet was not just a financial blow, it was a devastating strike against one's status. Soon the rumor mill of the city began to churn. Whispers echoed in the forum that Elien was ruined, that the gods had cursed him, that he was an incompetent merchant who had flown too close to the sun. Furthermore, one of his investors, a greedy patrician named Cassius, threatened to bring Elien before the magistrates to sue him for the lost cargo, citing negligence. Before his training with Rusticus, this social pressure would have destroyed Elien. The overthinking mind is deeply obsessed with the opinions of the tribe. It replays criticisms on an endless loop, agonizing over how to manipulate other people's perceptions, trying to control the uncontrollable narrative of the crowd. But Elien was no longer the man who had left Rome. To deal with the crushing weight of societal judgment and the impending lawsuit, he employed the next two habits of the Stoic masters. Habit 5. The view from above. The cosmic perspective. On a particularly stressful day, when the rumors were at their loudest and Cassius's lawyers were harassing him, Elien felt the old, familiar tightness in his chest. The walls of his mind were closing in. The lawsuit felt like the most important, catastrophic event in the history of the world. He immediately stopped what he was doing and walked out of the city, climbing to the highest peak of the Palatine Hill. There he practiced the 5th habit, the view from above. Elien closed his eyes and used his imagination to lift his consciousness out of his body. In his mind's eye, he hovered above the hill, looking down at his own tiny, physical form. Then he zoomed out further. He saw the city of Rome, a sprawling network of streets and temples, crawling with over 1 million people, all bustling like tiny ants, obsessed with their own microscopic dramas. He zoomed out even further, visualizing the entire Italian peninsula, surrounded by the vast blue Mediterranean. He saw the massive empires of the east, the untamed forests of the north, and the endless deserts of the south. He imagined the entire globe hanging in the silent, infinite void of the cosmos. He thought of the vast, unending stretch of time, the empires that had risen to ash before Rome, and the empires that would fall long after Rome was dust. From this cosmic vantage point, Elien looked back down at the city, back down at the forum, back down at the specific court where Cassius was preparing a lawsuit over a few crates of wet purple dye. "Look at how infinitesimally small this is," Elien whispered to himself. "Look at this tiny speck of a planet in a tiny sliver of time. And here I am, letting my peace be destroyed by the opinions of a few mortals who will all be dead and forgotten in less than a century." The view from above is the ultimate cure for overthinking, because overthinking requires a narrow, self-obsessed perspective. It requires you to believe that your problem is the center of the universe. By forcing his mind to zoom out, Elien drastically shrank his problems. The lawsuit, the rumors, the loss of wealth, they did not disappear, but they were reduced to their proper, incredibly small proportions. He could breathe again. The weight of the world was lifted because he realized how small the world truly was. Habit 6. Objective representation. The naked truth. Descending from the heights of the Palatine Hill, Elien walked down into the sprawling, echoed halls of the Basilica Julia to face his reckoning. The air inside the grand marble building was thick with the smell of sweat and the buzzing anticipation of a massive crowd. Lawsuits in ancient Rome were not merely quiet legal proceedings. They were vicious public theater. Hundreds of citizens had gathered, eager to witness the dramatic destruction of a once great merchant. At the center of the spectacle stood Cassius, surrounded by a phalanx of expensive, sneering lawyers, his face already twisted into an expression of triumphant rage. As Elian approached the magistrate's tribunal, Cassius did not even wait for the formal proceedings to begin. He launched a calculated, venomous verbal assault designed to break Elian's spirit in front of the watchful crowd. "Look at this wretched creature!" Cassius bellowed, his voice echoing violently off the vaulted ceilings. "You are a fool, Elian, a cursed, incompetent failure who offends the gods. You have stolen my wealth through your sheer stupidity, and I will see you stripped of your home, your name, and your freedom. You will die a beggar in the gutters of the Subura." Hearing this, Elian felt the immediate, primitive surge of adrenaline. His chest tightened. His overthinking mind instinctively rushed to generate a catastrophic story to match the environment. This is humiliating. The whole city is watching and judging me. My reputation is permanently dead. I am a failure, and my life is truly over. This is the exact moment where the overthinker loses the battle, not to the event itself, but to the terrifying, exaggerated narrative constructed around the event. But Elian caught the thought before it could take root, violently pulling the reins on his own mind. He applied the sixth Stoic habit, objective representation, known to the ancients as stripping the bark. The Stoics understood a fundamental psychological truth. Things do not upset us. It is our judgments about things that upset us. Overthinking thrives on dramatic adjectives, emotional projections, and catastrophic narratives added to simple facts. To stop overthinking, you must strip away the emotional language and describe the event in its absolute, boring, objective truth. Marcus Aurelius used this technique brilliantly to avoid the seductions of power and luxury. When served a lavish, expensive feast, he wouldn't allow his mind to say, "This is a majestic, divine banquet." He would strip it down to raw matter. "This is the dead body of a fish, the dead body of a bird, and the fermented juice of a crushed grape." When looking at his royal purple robes, he noted it was just sheep's wool dyed with shellfish blood. By stripping away the romance and the assigned value, he removed the object's power over him. Elian applied this ruthless objectivity to the screaming Cassius. He stopped looking at the patrician as a powerful, terrifying enemy destroying his life. He stripped the intimidating event down to its bare, physical reality. What is actually happening here in this exact second? Elian asked himself, keeping his breathing slow and even. A human male is standing in front of me. His vocal cords are vibrating, pushing air out of his lungs. He is producing sound waves that are traveling through the air. The muscles in his face are contorting into an asymmetrical expression. That is all. It is just vibrating air and muscle spasms. Elian completely refused to add the judgment. This is terrible. He denied his mind the narrative. My life is ruined. He kept his representation completely, coldly objective. Because he stripped the emotion from the event, Cassius's venomous words passed right through him like wind through the branches of an old oak tree. The insults found nothing to attach to. When the shouting finally ceased, and it was Elian's turn to speak, he did not defend his ego, nor did he return the insults. His voice was steady, entirely void of any anger or fear. He calmly and objectively presented the undeniable facts. The meteorological reality of the storm, the maritime laws regarding acts of the gods, and his meticulously kept logbooks. The magistrate, struck by Elian's incredible poise and impenetrable rationality in the face of such aggressive emotion, ruled in Elian's favor. dismissing the lawsuit entirely. Elian walked out of the basilica into the bright Roman afternoon. He had lost his wealth, but he had kept his soul, proving that the truth, when stripped of our anxieties and dramatic narratives, is rarely as terrifying as the stories we tell ourselves. The dismissal of Cassius's lawsuit was a victory, but it did not magically restore Elian's bank accounts. The stark reality of his situation remained. He was a merchant with no fleet, a patrician-class citizen who now had to navigate the world with the meager resources of a common plebeian. To survive, Elian had to return to the loud, suffocating and chaotic streets of the Subura, the densely packed, working-class district of Rome. Here, the air was thick with the smell of roasting garlic, cheap wine, and open sewage. Instead of trading priceless purple dyes by the ton, Elian found himself renting a tiny wooden stall, haggling over small clay amphorae of olive oil and basic linen tunics. For a man who had once dined with senators, the fall was precipitous. And this is exactly where the overthinking mind sets its most dangerous traps. For the first few weeks in the Subura, Elian's mind became a haunted house. While his hands arranged the clay pots, his thoughts were constantly time-traveling. He would look back at the past with agonizing regret. If only I hadn't put so much cargo on that one flagship. If only I had waited for the spring sailing season. Why was I so foolish? Then, his mind would violently snap forward into the distant future, painting pictures of exhaustion and despair. I am too old to rebuild. It will take me 20 years of selling oil just to buy one small ship. I will die in this filthy market, forgotten and poor. This relentless oscillation between a past he could not change and a future he could not predict was tearing his soul apart. The anxiety was a physical weight, a tightening in his throat that made it hard to swallow the cheap porridge he now lived on. He was surviving the poverty, but he was drowning in the timeline. Desperate for a reprieve, Elian walked through the winding, shadowed streets to the edge of the city, seeking out the quiet garden of his mentor, Rusticus. He found the old philosopher sitting perfectly still beneath a sprawling fig tree, watching a line of ants march across the dusty earth. Elian poured out his frustrations, his regrets, and his terrifying projections of the years to come. Rusticus listened in silence, his face an impenetrable mask of calm. When Elian finally ran out of breath, Rusticus pointed to the ants. "Look at them, Elian. Do you think this ant is weeping over the breadcrumb it dropped yesterday? Do you think it is paralyzed by the fear of a thunderstorm that might happen next month?" "No," Elian sighed. "It is just an ant. It only knows what it is doing right now." "Exactly," Rusticus said, his voice dropping to a low, powerful timbre. "And in this regard, the ant possesses a wisdom that the mighty Roman merchant has lost. You are suffering from the disease of time travel. The past is a ghost. It no longer exists. The future is a phantom. It has not yet arrived. The only place where life actually happens, the only place where reality exists, is right here, right now." Habit 7. Hic et nunc, the anchor of the present. Rusticus introduced Elian to the 7th Stoic habit, hic et nunc, which translates to here and now. Overthinking is the arrogant belief that you can solve the future by worrying about it, or rewrite the past by regretting it, Rusticus explained. Seneca wrote that, "He suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary." You are dragging the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow into today, crushing the present moment under a weight it was never designed to bear. To break the habit of chronic overthinking, Rusticus gave Elian a severe and uncompromising prescription. He had to aggressively narrow his timeline. "When you stand in your market stall tomorrow," Rusticus commanded, You are forbidden from thinking about next year. You are forbidden from thinking about next month, or even tomorrow afternoon. You must pull your mind completely into the exact action you are performing. When you are pouring olive oil, you must become the oil, the jar, and the customer in front of you. That is your entire universe. The next morning, Elian returned to the noisy, crowded Subura. Almost immediately, his mind tried to escape. A wealthy merchant walked past, wearing the fine Tyrian purple silk that Elian used to sell. The pang of jealousy and the spiral of future anxiety began to rise. Will I ever wear silk again? Look at how far I have fallen. Elian caught himself. He mentally slammed the door on the future and the past. He gripped the rough clay of an amphora until his knuckles turned white. Hic et nunc, he whispered to himself. Here and now. He forced his attention violently into the present. He noticed the rough texture of the clay beneath his fingertips. He smelled the earthy, peppery scent of the olive oil. He looked directly into the eyes of the baker's wife, who was waiting to buy it. He listened to the chaotic music of the market, the blacksmith's hammer, the braying of mules, the shouts of children. A miraculous thing happened. The moment he anchored his consciousness to the physical reality of the present second, the anxiety vanished. Overthinking cannot survive in the absolute present. Fear requires time. It requires a hypothetical future to exist. Regret requires a past. But in the immediate, split second of now, there is no fear. There is only action. Day by day, Elian practiced this relentless presence. When his mind drifted to the massive, insurmountable mountain of rebuilding his wealth, he stopped looking at the peak. He lowered his gaze to the single step right in front of his feet. Just sell this one jar. Just balance this one ledger. Just sweep the floor of this stall. By breaking his life down into micro moments, the impossible became manageable. He wasn't rebuilding an empire. He was just having one good conversation, making one fair trade, surviving one single day at a time. The crushing weight of overthinking was replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of focused execution. He discovered that the present moment is an impenetrable fortress. When you live entirely within it, nothing can overwhelm you. Years flowed by like the Tiber River. Through sheer discipline, unwavering focus on the present, and a complete refusal to be disturbed by external events, Elian slowly, steadily rebuilt his life. He didn't just regain his wealth. He surpassed it. But this time his wealth looked different. He no longer bought lavish estates to impress politicians, nor did he hoard silver out of a fear of poverty. He lived comfortably but simply, treating his money not as his identity, but as a neutral tool to do good, to fund the arts, and to help the poor of the Subura, where he had learned his greatest lessons. He was widely regarded as the most unshakable man in Rome. When the emperor raised taxes, other merchants rioted in the streets. Elian quietly adjusted his ledgers. When a plague swept through the city, others panicked and fled. Elian stayed, calmly nursing the sick, protected by his acceptance of mortality. Memento mori. When competitors lied about him, he met them with a warm, pitying smile, knowing their words were just empty vibrations of air, objective representation. However, Elian knew a dangerous truth about the human mind. Peace is not a destination you arrive at. It is a garden you must cultivate every single day. The weeds of overthinking, ego, and anxiety are always waiting to grow back if the gardener falls asleep. To ensure his mind never returned to the dark labyrinth of worry, Elian practiced the final, most crucial habit of the Stoic path. Habit 8. The evening audit. Philosophical journaling. Every evening, without fail, As the golden Roman sun dipped below the 7 hills and the city grew quiet, Elian retreated to a small, unadorned room in his home. He lit a single oil lamp, sat at a wooden desk, and pulled out a wax tablet and an iron stylus. This was the practice of the evening audit, heavily championed by the Stoic philosopher Seneca. It is the ultimate tool for capturing a wandering mind and demanding accountability from one's own soul. Overthinking is essentially a chaotic, unmanaged dialogue happening inside your own head. When thoughts remain trapped in the mind, they act like a storm in a jar, swirling, amplifying, and distorting reality. The act of writing forces those nebulous, terrifying thoughts to take a rigid, physical shape. It slows the mind down to the speed of the hand. Under the flickering light of the lamp, Elian would subject his day to a ruthless yet compassionate interrogation. He asked himself 3 specific questions every night. 1. What did I do wrong today? Elian was not looking to punish himself. He was acting as an objective observer of his own behavior. Today, when the dock worker dropped the crate of spices, I felt a flash of anger and raised my voice. I allowed an external event to disturb my inner peace. I temporarily forgot the dichotomy of control. He wrote it down. Acknowledging the failure stripped it of its subconscious power. 2. What did I do right today? Stoicism is not just about identifying flaws. It is about reinforcing virtue. When the messenger brought news of the delayed shipment from Egypt, my mind began to spiral into worry about lost profits. But I caught the thought. I brought myself back to the hic et nunc and focused on the present. I maintained my calm. By recording his victories, Elian built a reservoir of self-trust. He proved to himself that he was capable of mastering his mind. 3. What duties remain undone? Overthinkers often lie awake at night because their brains are trying to remember all the things they have to do tomorrow. The mind refuses to sleep because it is afraid of forgetting. By writing down what was left undone, Elian essentially downloaded his anxieties onto the wax tablet. I must finalize the contract with the olive farmers tomorrow. I must visit Rusticus. Once it was written down, the mind was given permission to let it go. The wax tablet held the burden, so Elian's mind didn't have to. Through this daily audit, Elian became his own master and his own student. He caught the early warning signs of overthinking before they could fully bloom into anxiety. If he noticed a pattern of worry developing over a few days in his journal, he could immediately apply the view from above or premeditatio malorum to crush it. One quiet evening in late autumn, an aging Elian made the familiar walk to the outskirts of the city to visit Rusticus. The old philosopher was frail now, his eyes clouded with age, but the profound stillness remained. Elian sat beside his old friend, pouring him a cup of watered wine. "I have done it, old friend," Elian said softly. "The storms still rage in the world. Empires clash, economies falter, and men still lie and cheat. But inside it is quiet. The labyrinth is gone." Rusticus reached out a trembling hand and rested it on Elian's arm. "You have found the only freedom that matters, Elian. The emperor commands legions, but he is a slave to his temper. The wealthy patrician owns 100 villas, but he is a prisoner to his anxiety. True power is not commanding the world. True power is when the world can no longer command you." Elian nodded, looking up at the vast canopy of stars stretching over the Roman sky. He thought of the terrified, overthinking merchant he used to be, a man chased by ghosts of the past and phantoms of the future, drowning in imaginary oceans. That man was dead. In his place stood a Stoic, a man who owned only what was truly his choices, his character, and the sacred, untouchable peace of the present moment. The world would continue to be chaotic, unpredictable, and often cruel, but Elian would never overthink it again. He would simply meet it, face to face, with a calm smile and an unbreakable mind. The mind is a battlefield, but you no longer have to fight unarmed. From realizing what you control to embracing your fate, anchoring in the present, and auditing your soul, these 8 ancient Stoic habits are your keys to escaping the prison of overthinking. You cannot control the storms of life, but you can build a mind that no storm can break. If this story brought you value and peace, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel for more ancient wisdom to master your modern life. Stay calm and stay stoic.